Hi, I'm Jim.
I'm Dave.
Together we are Pepsi.
Oh, yes, we are, aren't we, Jim? And Jim's back this week from his brief vacation, and we want you folks to always remember...
As long as the Matrix exists, the human race will never be free.
But
Welcome
Jesus
back,
can...
Jim. Oh, sorry.
Well, yes, I'm back. I heard when I was away you had double the audience. Wow, I guess maybe you just need to give me a pink slip, huh?
Nah. It was just a fluke.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking about flukes, you want to hear an interesting fluke that happened to our program?
Yeah, sure. Tell us about it.
I got an email. I guess you didn't get it yet, but I got an email that from Australia. There's a young Christian man who has a radio program in Australia, and he conducted his own top 10 maverick radio stations presenting the truths, or truths that you don't hear anywhere else. So he considers them mavericks. He also considers them purveyors of truth that is not being told in the pulpit, not being told on the news or any other source. So 1 out of 10, you and I, buddy, scored number 4 out of 1 to 10 as being the fourth in a list of 10 of mavericks. So,
well, if number 1 is good, then we're in a good place here.
I guess maybe. I mean, at least to some guy in Australia with a radio show.
Yeah. Who's number 1, by the way?
A bit humbling. We were just below number 3 was Chuck Missler. Boy, to even stand in his shadow is pretty cool, I think. But sure. I look at Chuck as being Gary Sternman, Chuck Missler, and I.D. Thomas are the premier pioneers in this stuff. They were writing and researching on this stuff, 30 years ago even. And, for me, they were a major inspiration for me to, get started in where I started at and confirming many of the things that the Lord had showed me. It was, their books and their work. So I kind of look at all 3 of those guys as being, some early pioneers. And they were doing stuff in the 70s and 80s where probably 5 or 6 people in the whole world were even addressing the whole Nephilim Genesis 6 issues. Speaking of which, this is what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, that's right. We got
on our program before. Our good friend that we've never actually met in person, but hopefully someday we will. Rob Skiba, and I think you're with us here, aren't you, Rob?
Yes, sir, I am. How are you?
All right. Good to have you.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
Rob, instead of me telling you a little bit about Rob, for some of you that are maybe new tonight here that have never heard Rob, Rob is a professional film writer, producer, very high caliber, very high level, and lots of experience. But he's also a born-again Christian believer, a researcher, and is very insightful in a lot of different things. Rob, maybe you can tell us a brief little, bio of yourself and introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Grew up in a Christian family. I received Christ as my Savior when I was 7. My dad was a Baptist minister, and 1977 was the year that I accepted Christ when I was 7, and it was also the same year that I saw Star Wars. And both radically changed my young life, if you can say changed. I don't know how much of a change you can have at 7, but both certainly set me on the path that I'm on today, both for my walk with God as well as my career path. When I saw Star Wars 13 times in the theater the first year it came out, I was convinced I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And that was ultimately to become a filmmaker, and pursued that throughout my whole adult life for the most part. I was in the Army. I got out of high school in 1987, joined the Army. So with the exception of the 8 years that I was a helicopter pilot flying around in the Army, the rest of my life has been pretty much with a camera glued to my face. Did a lot of corporate videos throughout the 90s, and then in 2004, I got hired at East West Ministries, which was an international missions organization, or is, it still is. I was their multimedia director and was able to travel around the world, was blessed to travel to 15 countries in about 6.5 years. As both a missionary as well as a filmmaker, I got to minister as well as document on film, so it was an incredible period of my life, and I stepped out of that last year last April to pursue my lifelong dream, but it was something that God basically put in my head and put in my heart and said, I'm releasing you now. You've had a lot of training over the last 40 years, and I'm releasing you now to do something that I want you to do. And that was something I had to learn early on. Was that, back in the old days, I used to say, I want to make movies for God. And that sounded noble and everything, but that was really kind of my agenda. And I had to learn through sort of the school of hard knocks that God wanted to make movies through me. There was a pretty big difference between the two. And where I used to hold on to it so tightly and try to do everything my way, now I'm holding on to it very loosely. I'm like, Lord, if it's going to happen, it's going to be you. Here I am, use me. And that came through a period of, about 3.5 years of breaking, a crucible that I would never want to repeat, but I'm thankful for because it's led me to where I am today. And that project that God called me out to do is called Seed. And it looks like somebody posted the link in the chat room already. That's seedtheseries.com.
Mm-hmm. And what's that about, Rob? Can you give us an idea when that finally comes into being, what it's going to be about, what our listeners can look forward to in that regard?
Yes, absolutely. Seed really came as a result of a couple of things. One of the last trips that I did with East West was to Cyprus, and there was a missionary conference taking place there, so it was an opportunity for me to meet a lot of people and to get everybody in one place at one time to get a lot of interviews and stories from the foreign field, And as part of that trip, I was able to go to Greece, and it was actually my second time in Greece and in Athens in particular. But at this particular time in my life, I was really kind of interested in the scripture where Jesus says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man, Matthew 24:37. Mm-hmm. And so that was already in my head as I was walking around Athens. And you can't look anywhere. I mean, it's like every direction you look, you see either the remnants of a temple or a toppled statue of a god, or you see centaurs and minotaurs and satyrs. It's like everywhere you look.
Wow.
All through the Greek Isles there, actually. It's kind of like that. And, I was looking around at all these things, and I was saying to myself, as a Star Wars fan, I'm thinking 4,000 years from now, nobody's going to remember Yoda. Here's a little green mythological creature from the imagination of a guy named George Lucas, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we're taught in school that all this stuff is just mythology. It's the imagination of a blind poet named Homer. And I was thinking to myself, there has to be more to it than this. It can't be. I started to think that these creatures, these so-called mythological creatures, were real. So I came home from that trip, and that was really heavy on my heart, and I told my wife about it. And I said, all those half-human, half-animal, animal-human hybrids and all that stuff and all the gods, I think they were real. And so we had a conversation about it, went to bed. Next morning, we wake up, and she checks her email, and she calls me, come here. So I go into the other room, and she's got her email program open, and it had a news blurb, and it was a BBC article that said scientists had successfully cloned a sheep with a human heart, and it went on to say that if they continue to do this, we're going to end up fusing the genes together, and we'll have animal-human hybrids, and we're going to have all kinds of ethical issues to deal with in that case. And it was like everything that I had just talked about the night before that I saw in Greece was happening in real life. And I said, man, this stuff. So I became obsessed with diving into this whole idea of transhumanism and transgenics and, the stuff that scientists are doing. I mean, you can go all the way back to Dolly the sheep and probably even further than that. But now we got rats with human brains and sheep with human hearts, cows that just recently they produced a cow that produces human breast milk, pigs with human blood. It's getting ridiculous.
Spider goats. I read an article recently about spider goats and pigs that had jellyfish DNA to them so that they glowed green. So Phoenix is not a thing of just a cat in a hat. It's a Frankenstein reality.
It goes further back than the animal-human deal. I mean, we've got genetically modified crops and plants and food and stuff that goes way back. And I'm thinking, okay, if this was a component of the days of Noah, we're doing it today. And as I started to look into this whole idea that maybe these things are real, I don't even know how I found it, but I found one of Tom Horn's websites, and he had called the Supernatural Collection, and it was like $60, I think. It was a great deal. It had I.D. Thomas's book, The Omega Conspiracy, and a couple of Tom Horn's books, and one of them was the Nephilim Stargates. And and there's several books and a couple of DVDs and CD audio packages, all for $60. And I'm like, wow, this is like the mother load, So I got that, and of course, as soon as I started reading I.D. Thomas's book and Tom Horn's book, and I also got a hold of Patty Heron's book, The Pyramid of the Apocalypse. And with these books, these authors start referring to extra biblical books like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Joshua and some Jubilees and some of these other what we call extra biblical books. And so I said, well, what are those? And I've always actually been, since I was a little kid, really been intrigued by when the Bible mentions books that are not in the Bible. Right. I'm always like, well, where are those books? And there's a lot more books than you would think mentioned in the Bible that are not in the Bible. And so I started looking those up, and two of them in particular that I gravitated towards were the Book of Enoch and Joshua, which go into great detail about Genesis 6 and what was going on with the whole Watchers and all that. And I didn't get very far in the Book of Joshua when it said one of the things the Nephilim taught people to do was the art of mixing one species with another. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And as I'm doing all this research, I was finding a lot of different researchers online, like L.A. Marzulli and others, that were out there. They're writing and talking about these kind of things. And I said, man, there's got to be a way to get this out into the mainstream public. I mean, we all got a fair audience here on Blog Talk, and, some of us have books and whatnot that are out there, but to reach the 7 billion people that are out there, or even the 300 million in the country, I thought there's got to be a better way, and that led me to the idea of doing a TV series, primarily because of my wife and I got hooked on the TV series Lost when it was out.
Didn't we all?
And it's funny. We used to make fun of people who watch Lost because we didn't get it. They would have Lost parties and, all these people having these little get-togethers trying to figure stuff out, and like, what a bunch of geeks, But then we got season 1 on DVD, and the Nielsen report says the average American watches 4 to 5 hours of TV a day, and that was not us. We were not part of that crowd until we got the DVD box set of Lost. And there's four episodes on one disc, and we couldn't just watch one episode on a disc. We'd watch 3 or 4 episodes, and we became that statistic. But what I liked about, and I was watching Battlestar Galactica at the same time on DVD. Both series kind of at the same time. And what I loved about Battlestar as opposed to Lost is Battlestar Galactica, they understood the end from the beginning, and they worked their way to it. And so I thought the season finale, the series finale, was very well done. I thought it tied up pretty much most of the loose ends anyway. Lost, on the other hand, I was very disappointed in the last couple of seasons, and especially the series finale. But what I learned watching those was that, wow, everything preaches. All these shows, they have a message, they have kind of an agenda. The trick is preaching without you knowing you're being preached to. Right. Because as soon as you feel like you're being preached to, you know it, and if you don't agree with it, you tune out.
Change the channel.
You change the channel because people don't go to the movies and they don't watch episodic TV to be preached to. They watch to be entertained. If they want to be preached to, they go to TVN or something, watch the preaching channels. So, but what I loved about the idea of TV was that you could spread a message out over a long period of time, and multiple episodes. And originally all my ambitions were to make a film, but with 90 to 120 minutes, you can only say so much, and it's a one-shot deal at best if you can make it into the theater, So, not that TV is a whole lot, not that it's easier, but it offered a lot more opportunities. And as far as the name, Seed, it really came out of the first prophecy in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 3, where God tells the devil that Eve's seed will crush his head.
Mm-hmm.
And the devil basically says, "Oh yeah, well I'm going to mess up the seed then." And
right.
his first run was to get their children, Adam and Eve's children, to fight, and Cain, of course, killed Abel. But then you turn a couple pages, you get to Genesis 6, and you have what I call the Genesis 6 experiment, where a platoon of fallen angels called the Watchers landed on Mount Hermon in the days of Jared and decided to mess up the seed. And so that became the natural title for the TV series. But the goal is essentially to, if you can imagine the mystery and intrigue of Lost with the sci-fi appeal of shows like Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica mixed with the alien agenda conspiracy type themes of the X-Files, you'd have a show called Seed that would be served on a secular palate, but written from a biblical and mythological worldview. So I can bring all these concepts from a biblical worldview into the public sector, but do it in a way that would be what I call edutainment. They'll be entertained, but they, whether they know it or not, they're also going to be getting an education.
That's far out. Hey, what's neat about that too, Rob, is that nowadays people can't afford to go to the movies because they, you got to take out a loan if you want to take your wife and kids, and it's so much easier just to sit in front of the television in your favorite chair with some snacks and to turn the television on and watch it. So I think television is a much better idea than going to the theater. It's cheaper. That appeals to me, and I know a lot of other people. And
sure.
And you can put it on pause. In the movie theater, if you got to use the restroom, well, you miss 10 minutes. So,
yeah, exactly.
So no, I think you have a very good idea there. I know that it's going to cost you a lot to make that. We've talked about that before, and we would encourage our listeners, if you get a chance, to go to Rob's website, and he'll give that out in a little while. And if anybody can afford to, please just you would be buying into saving souls. Let's put it that way. By helping them out with this, and I think that all of us should in one way or another try to get this series onto a television so that people can get saved, and the sooner the better, because the time is short. Isn't that the truth?
Boy, yeah, that is the truth.
And it doesn't have to be a lot. I'm in the $333 a month club. Love that $333.
I posted a link in the chat room. It's seedtheseries.com/CSEE.html, and that's kind of a splash page that just lets you know a little bit about what we're doing, and we'll talk probably a little bit about this graphic that's on the front page there. But there is a subscription package, and like Jim said, it starts at $3.33, and triple digits will play a big part in the series. In particular, numbers related to 33 will play a part throughout the series. Jesus said he came to destroy the works of the devil, and anybody that understands anything about secret societies and that kind of stuff, they know that 33 is a pretty high number.
That's right.
But Jesus himself is represented by that number. He died when he was 33 after a 3-year ministry and dead for 3 days. So you got your 3333 right there to go against the 33.33%, 1/3 of the angels that fell with Lucifer. But at $3.33 a month, that's less than a cup of coffee.
Yeah, it's true.
And our feeling is we can't go to the networks. We can't go to any major network, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, or anything like that, because they will control our content. Yeah, they'll censor it, and they can cancel us prematurely before we've gotten all the messages out that we want to get out. So essentially what we're trying to do is put the power in the audience's hand for a change. And I think everybody at some point has had a favorite TV show that got canceled before it was, finished.
Right.
And you're like, how could you do that, But this also frees us up to call our own shots, so that we're not censored, and we're able to do it completely independent. But we need a lot of people to get behind us. At $3.33, obviously we need about 300,000 people for an average budget per episode to compete with shows like the Event or Fringe, which have $3 million budgets per episode. Our budget's only going to be about $1 million by comparison. But we're going to be shooting here in Dallas, where we're able to get the same bang for our buck for about a third the cost. For the most part, we can get the same production value here in Texas. LA numbers are inflated, but
sure.
300,000 may sound like a lot of people, but when you realize how many people are into sci-fi, you're talking tens, if not hundreds of millions of people globally.
That's right.
So it's just a matter of, and believers too, it's a matter of if believers see what we're doing and want to get behind it and support it as a ministry, because that's the way we look at it. It's just an opportunity for people to reap the rewards, because I believe you reap what you sow, and wherever you sow sometimes in good soil, sometimes in bad soil. But whatever soil you're sowing into, you're going to reap whatever that whatever the harvest is.
Exactly. Now, if if a person wanted to give, do you give alternatives like giving through PayPal and stuff like that, or?
Yes. Yes. In fact, if you go to the seedtheseries.com/sow.html, there all the different options are there.
Oh, okay. Good.
For people to get involved however they like. And we are actually, we also have a nonprofit organization, and anything over $33 and over is actually tax deductible. So people who want to contribute at the higher levels, they would actually be able to deduct it from the taxes.
Oh, it's amazing. Okay. I'm going there right after the show.
Hey, right on.
Yeah.
I already did. If everybody did, it'd be a reality,
For sure.
We got to get reality. It needs to be up there. It needs to be seen.
That's right.
I do think that's even on the internet now. There's more and more streaming television shows and whatnot, and I think that's going to be the up and coming thing that's going to vie attention or competition with YouTube and some of the other videos formats is an actual live streaming television programs. It's definitely going to be a good thing to. It puts more control in the individual's ability to watch when they want to watch and what they want to watch. And like you said, Hollywood won't control the content.
The internet. Here we are right now. It wasn't 10 years ago that you couldn't do what we're doing right now. You had to have a radio station or know somebody who did to have your own radio show or college radio or whatever. But through the internet, we're allowed to have our own radio show right now. And
that's right.
I was looking at the way TV is going. Even as it is, what little TV that my wife and I do watch, we watch it online. We don't watch whatever show it is at Thursday at 8 p.m. Central. We watch it at abc.com at our leisure, streaming in HD with limited commercials. So I'm thinking, if all of the TV major networks are going online anyway, and new TVs are shipping with internet connections, what do I need to go to the studios for? I can do it myself. Just do it online.
Yeah, and if you could break into that Netflix market too, that there's a lot of people going to that. That'd be a good thing too. Yeah.
we just got a Netflix subscription, and man, it's kind of addictive, because I'm very nostalgic. I'm very nostalgic, and so we like watching a lot. Well, I do more than my wife does, but like watching a lot of the old '70s shows. The Incredible Hulk and Buck Rogers and all that. But it's pretty cool.
I agree. Well, we look forward to that becoming a reality, your Seed series, and I tell you right now, I'm going to be one of the faithful followers when it comes out. I think I'm already addicted, and you haven't even released it, so that's an indication.
Well, thank you, and I'm going to put another link in the chat room there to the blog site. It's seedtheseries.com/blog. What that is, I got to realizing I'm not going to write all 72 episodes. I have them outlined. I have 72 episodes, 6 seasons essentially with 12 episodes per season. Wow. But I'm not going to write all 72. I've got the outline. I know what each season is going to talk about and where the story's going to go. But when I need other writers, I can't expect them to read and watch everything that I've read and watched for the last 15 years. I wish I could plug hey, here's what I know, plug a USB cable in my head and plug a cable in their head. I can't do that.
No.
But what I can do is distill the 15 years worth of research that I've been doing into one resource. And so that's what I've been doing with the Babylon Rising series. And essentially what that is it's the nonfiction behind the fiction. In other words, if you want to know what Seed's going to be about, there's an awful lot of information on that blog that will give you an idea about the subject matter that we'll be covering.
Awesome. Totally awesome. Okay, I'm jotting that down right now.
Yeah, what I've been doing also is these blogs have gotten somewhat lengthy, so I decided to read them on my radio. I have a Blog Talk Radio show also, and so I started using my radio program to record myself reading the blog, so if people don't have time to read, they can actually just I got a player on the front page there, and you just click it and sit back and listen. So you can read it or listen to it, either way.
You have a MP3 or what, Rob? Because if it is, you could download it and listen to it in your car on a long drive, too, you know?
Yes. I'll put a link to it's on the main page also, but I'll put a link in the chat room to the download page, so you can just basically right-click on the link and save target as, and save you get the MP3 players files.
Fantastic. This is like going to an electronics store with a whole bunch of money in your pocket.
Yeah, I mean, I've got about 30 plus hours worth of audio there, so enough to keep you busy.
Oh, you're not kidding. Well, Jim was telling me that we were going to talk about time travel tonight. Gentlemen, are we going to do that?
Sure.
Well, we got an hour and a half left. I think we can, fit. Well, probably that and quite a bit more in. Actually, I hope we can get into a little sampler of what Rob's going to be talking about this. This month in Missouri at the. Rob's going to be one of the speakers, I think. Aren't you a speaker, or are you presenting a workshop at the...
Yeah, what actually happened, this is a Future Congress. If you go to futurecongress.com, it's something that David Hitt and Tom Horn put together. They grew very fast. They've got some pretty big-name speakers there. I was, shocked and honored to be listed with some of these people. And originally I had one workshop that I was going to do, an hour-and-a-half session, but right around the time of the Japanese earthquake, I had posted a blog, and I'm not going to say I predicted the Japanese earthquake, but I had written some things kind of associated with it, dealing with Nibiru and Planet X and all that kind of stuff, and I posted that blog the night that the earthquake happened, and whatever it was, it struck a nerve with a lot of people. My website went from an average of 200 hits a day to 6,000 hits in one day.
Oh my goodness!
And shot up very quickly. I've had 107,000 plus hits on my website just in the last 4 months or so.
Wow.
4 or 5 months, and so what happened as a result of the interest that was out there, the organizers of the event contacted me and asked if I'd be willing to talk about some of that stuff, and they gave me 2 more hour-and-a-half sessions. So I got 3 hour-and-a-half sessions at this Future Congress, and so I'm working like a madman now to get everything together for it.
I can imagine.
To give the presentations, but yeah, we'll be talking about the 3 subjects that I'll be covering is mythology and the coming Great Deception. And basically with the mythology and the coming Great Deception series is we're going to explore, the Bible says that the second commandment is thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Right. Well, who are these, quote, other gods and where did they come from? And and I have to give credit where credit is due, that I was challenged to think a little bit differently as a result of reading King Wells. I don't know if do you know King Wells?
Oh yeah.
Very nice.
Excellent book. I was going to bring that up. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, he made a short little book. It's a very quick read called Ancient Myths in the Bible, and in it he essentially issues the challenge to view the Bible from a mythological worldview, which on the surface sounds like a strange thing to say because growing up in church, we're kind of taught look at everything from a biblical worldview. But he's absolutely right, because if you consider the time in which the Bible was written, the books of the Bible, both Old and New Testament, those books were all written at a time when the rest of the world was worshiping other gods, and to them it wasn't mythology. It was real. They believed Zeus was real and all these other guys were real. And if you read the Bible with that mentality, you realize that the entire Bible is really God's war against the gods. And his desire to keep his people, specifically in biblical terms, talking about the Jews, the Hebrew people, away from all those gods, but they kept going after those other gods, so they had to deal with the consequences of that. But you get to the New Testament, and there's they I think it was in Ephesus, I believe, that they believed that Barnabas was Zeus and that Paul was Mercury. That shows right there that to those people, this stuff was real, and then the Bible comes totally alive when you look at it from that perspective. So, and I believe all of that is going to play a big part in what the Bible talks about, a coming great deception that's going to be so great so as to deceive even the elect. I definitely believe that the ancient gods, and primarily the Anunnaki, those are the ones I'm kind of keeping my eyes on right now, the Sumerian mythology, Babylonian, but I believe that's L.A. Marzulli's got a book he's working on called The Cosmic Chess Match, and I think that's what it's called. And basically his concept is, what's that?
Cosmic chess game.
Yeah, where there's move and counter move, where God makes a move and the devil will counter it, and the devil makes a move and God counters it. And so he's talking about this move and counter move thing, and I believe that the devil set up a move on the chessboard, if you will, thousands of years ago, even in the days of Noah and probably before, that he set it in motion way back then for a payoff, I believe, in our day. And and so I'm going to deal with that in the first talk, which, interestingly enough, was scheduled for Saturday at 3:30. And I was like totally jazzed. And I'm going to intentionally wait 3 minutes before I start. So it'll be 3:33. But I was pretty excited about that time slot. And then the second one I'm going to do is the Mount Hermon Roswell connection, and I'm sure listeners to your show and anybody who's been on Jim's website probably knows what that's all about.
3, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll be talking about that and how it relates to our days, how our days, like the days of Noah, and the last presentation I'm doing is why we need to be culturally relevant, using media in particular, with an angle towards showing people what Steed's all about. So those are the 3 topics I'll be talking about at the future Congress.
Wow.
Oh, that's great, man. That sounds like quite a big door, an opportunity for you. I know my own ministry branched out greatly when I went to Roswell in 2003 and spoke at the first Ancient of Days conference. And then I spoke at the next several of them in a row. Well, actually, when I went to speak the first one, I went back home 3 months later, lock, stock, and barrel. I moved to Roswell and lived there for 4 years. And that was, I'll tell you, that was an education in itself, almost as good as traveling how many countries in the 6 years? I mean, there's a master's degree right there, just in the exposure and the life skills and life experiences that you've had a chance to experience. But living in Roswell was pretty much the same thing, because there's the global central hub, kind of the mecca for everything UFO and alien. And from there, you get to meet pretty much everybody that's involved in the UFO community, secular or Christian, seems to pass through there for one reason or another. So it's kind of an interesting situation. So I think this is going to be just as big of an opportunity for you speaking at this seminar. So we're definitely going to be keeping you in prayer, man, that everything goes
thank you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I actually stumbled on, Dave, I think it was your kind of a diary of 2005 when you guys were. You looked like you had a kind of a play-by-play when David Flynn was out there, and you have your little GPSs and showing the I stumbled on that page probably a week ago, because I like to give credit where credit's due, and as I'm building my PowerPoint presentation on the Roswell Mount Hermon connection, I, of course, cite David Flynn. So I was looking for a picture of him, to put on the PowerPoint slide, and I found it through Google Images on your webpage.
Huh.
So I was kind of reading about that, and saw your shop there, Jim, that you had there. It's pretty cool. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that was a good time out in the desert. We the night before, I was really tired. That was the day we drove in from Albuquerque. We flew in Albuquerque, but and I was all ready to go to bed, and the Lord said, "No, you're not going to bed yet. You got to write a prayer for tomorrow." And I'm like, "Oh, come on." So anyway, I started writing, and about an hour and a half later, that was over with. And we went out there, and you read on there how the the GPS units blinked out on us twice, which never happens according to Dave's brother. But we prayed over the ground and prayed over Roswell and held communion out there and the whole 9 yards, and also prayed that the next year that the city of Roswell wouldn't profit from the UFO festival and stuff like that. And unfortunately, fortunately, I guess, but Jim's museum was one of the casualties, but that was the Lord's doing anyway, because there's a time and a season for everything. But it was the worst summer they'd ever had on that in Roswell for the UFO festival. So I'm convinced that Dave's findings were correct and that we were in the right place. The enemy didn't want us out there, and blinking out the satellites like that was a sure indication that was the truth. But again, there's that number 33 again. It was right on the 33rd parallel. So,
man,
yeah, it's really bizarre. It really is. But I'm glad you made it to the website.
Yeah, it's so funny how the Lord kind of directs your path when you're searching for this stuff. And just like He directed you guys out there, that was what a revelation. 1947 and 48 and that whole time frame there, it's not a coincidence. The church may have tried to hide and suppress this information. If you look through the history of our Bible, the book of Enoch has been in and out of our Bible as scripture. The Ethiopians still have it in their Bible, but it's interesting. They pull books out of our Bible, such as the book of Enoch. But then here you got this 1947-48 window where you have Roswell, New Mexico, you have Israel becoming a nation, and you have a little kid throw a rock in a cave, cracks open a jar, and out pops the Dead Sea Scrolls, and here's the Book of Enoch. Which if you open the Book of Enoch, the first few verses says that this book is not for today, but for a future generation who shall live in the time of tribulation. It's like the first few verses of the book tells you that. And so that's not a coincidence. God has given us exactly what we need to know for what's coming.
Exactly.
Days ahead.
Yeah, I was.
Those 2 years kind of show kind of what L.A. Marzulli's next book coming out, the checkmate chess game going on. The Roswell crash, I think, was one of Satan's biggest deceptions, and a reintroduction to everything and anything of the coming end time deception. But at the same time, it's when Israel, became a nation. It's the same time when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. The same time that the first term flying saucers was used by Kenneth Arnold. There was a lot of stuff going on at that time.
Sure was.
It was the same time we tried to flush somebody out of the Antarctic. It had a lot to do with the UFOs that were being seen.
I know.
A lot of craziness going on. Natural on either side, God and Satan's.
Just about the same time that the UN was organized as an organization and started the beginning of the one world government, which we're seeing at the doorstep right now.
Yep.
Hey, gentlemen, looks like we have a caller. You want to take a call or anybody?
Sure.
Okay, let's see what we have here. Hey, caller, you're live. What's your name?
Hello, how are you doing?
Okay, who's this?
Dead voice anywhere.
I'm Aaron.
Oh, hi, Aaron.
God bless you.
You
good
too.
Good to hear you.
Amen.
I'm listening to the show. Very good, informative information, and I'm already very eager to watch that new series.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very fascinating, and I study various technologies and these like ancient the concepts about like the ancient advanced technologies like the pyramid construction and things of this nature from a Christian perspective. And
Sure.
I would like to ask you a question, Mr. Skiba, if you could hear me there.
Yeah.
Okay. What I find interesting is how a lot of both Christians and non-Christians have assumed that the pre-flood, the antediluvian civilization, the time of Noah and before, was essentially Bronze Age or Iron Age like. But I'm convinced, and I'm sure you all are from various facts and pieces of information, that these people, because they were living for centuries, that while sadly they turned away from the Lord, they were technologically very advanced. And then when you throw in, the whole wrinkle about the fallen angels interacting with them, there was a whole nother level to that. I would like to know, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that at some point they increased in technology to where they were even far beyond us in certain areas?
Yeah, I very much believe. I've always been totally against the theory of evolution my whole life. And so, the theory of evolution essentially says, from goo to you by way of the zoo, a slime bolt, bolt of lightning hit some slime and out popped, whatever, and it evolved into people. And that today, we are so highly evolved that we think we came from monkeys. I'm thinking, no. And we only use 6 to 10% of our brain. I think that's proof of the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy, that things go from better to worse given time. That if you go backwards in time and you look at it from a biblical worldview, that we had, I believe, 100% use of our brain, and who knows what capabilities we had just as normal people. Never mind people given angel technology and fallen, the stuff that the fallen angels gave us. But I believe that the pre-flood world was extremely advanced. And this is something that's made me think about, we think about the days of Noah, and a lot of times we look at the things that are going on today and try to see, wow, were these things happening in the days of Noah, and vice versa. But if you look at it, if we are going to the moon, supposedly, I'm not entirely convinced that we did, but that's another story. But supposedly we're going out to the planets, and we got space probes that are out there leaving the galaxy and whatnot. If we're doing that in our day, and our day is supposed to be likened to the days of Noah, that has opened my mind to the possibility of, wow, did pre-flood man have space flight capability?
Mm-hmm.
We think we're so highly advanced today, but most of our advancement is relies on computer and artificial intelligence.
Right.
Whereas the pre-flood world, I think people had just regular, brain intelligence, and we're probably capable of so much more than we are today.
Right. And for example, think about this. Like our technology, is basically, let's say, roughly about 300 years old. But what happens when you have guys who are living for 6, 7, 8, even 900 years, and they have all that time to work on things?
Yeah, I always thought, imagining Tesla and Einstein as being around for 1,000 years or 900 years. You can get a lot out of those brains in that length of time.
For sure.
And that's what I was going to say. If you can, I was just going to say, just what you said, Jim. If you can imagine all those great minds that were spread apart over centuries, what if they could all hang out in a room together and hash out theories? Einstein and Newton and Kepler and all these guys working together. Whew, man, what were they capable of?
That'd be quite a think tank.
Right.
But that might be exactly what the pre-flood world was all about. But if I can quote from the Book of Enoch, since we're mentioning it here, I'm gonna quote exactly from Enoch 63:1 and 64:6. Combine them together, and it says this: "These are the angels who have descended from heaven to earth, and have revealed secrets to the sons of men, and have seduced the sons of men to the commission of sin. A commandment has gone forth from the Lord against those who dwell on the earth, that their end may be, for they know every secret of the angels." Not some, not a little, every secret of the angels. They had full access to the technology and the understanding that existed in the eternal realm that we're not supposed to know here. It's like giving a little kid a gun.
Hey, but Jim, didn't it say somewhere else there that they were God kind of mocks them somewhere in the Book of Enoch, and he says, sure you think you got all the good secrets, but compared to the ones that I have here, what you got is junk. I can't remember where that is. It's in Enoch somewhere. So
you need to find that one. That's a goodie.
Yeah.
But now let me
we're not
throw
quoting
this
this as equal to Scripture when we're doing this, guys. So the audience out there, or anybody that's going to listen to the podcast later, we're not quoting this with the authority as the written, inspired Word of God. We're saying that this book, because it's even mentioned in the book of Jude, is validated, at least for its historical accuracy and commentary. So at least for me, I'm quoting it on that basis. I'm quoting it as a historical text and reference, not as thus saith the Lord. Just wanted to put in that little clarification so people don't want to.
So let me throw this question out to all you guys, though. Wouldn't you say that the technology in and of itself, like a hammer, is just a tool, and the whether it's good or evil is the context of how it's used? For example, they figured out how to use, genetically engineered bacteria to clean up, pollution and things like this. That in and of itself, that's not, an evil thing, but it's like when people start to use it for ungodly desires and to things that don't glorify God, so on and so forth, that's when it crosses the boundary. That's when it becomes evil. What are your thoughts on that, about the technology?
Yeah, guys, and then we have another caller after that. So.
Okay. Go ahead, Rob. You answer that first, and we'll follow.
Yeah, I believe that is definitely possible, though I think that most of the technology and things that were developed in the pre-flood world were not for the benefit of mankind at all, because even Genesis talks about the entire earth had been corrupted.
Yep.
The whole earth had corrupted its way, and Enoch and Joshua go into more detail, but the inspired text of Genesis tells you the same thing, that really the flood was an act of mercy. People want to think of it as God's anger and judgment, but just like in our day, in the coming tribulation, the scriptures say that if those days not be shortened, no flesh would survive. That's exactly the way it was in the pre-flood world. If God hadn't intervened, no flesh would have survived, and especially the flesh that was needed to be the ancestor of Jesus. God was preserving his seed, but really the flood was an act of mercy to preserve the world from the total, absolute destruction that the fallen had caused.
Exactly. I
think we lost our other caller. I guess
Yeah.
Maybe you'll
Thank
call
you.
back.
God bless you.
But I think that technology in itself is not evil. It is the people behind it, and that is why God is preventing us from knowing certain things. Not because He's trying to suppress us. He's a loving parent trying to take care of his kids. He knows that right now we just do not have, in our sin nature, the ability to use wise judgment or control. Our best efforts are always going to end up becoming corrupted by the enemy to twist and pervert that technology for ulterior methods and means. And this has been the way it's been all throughout history, right, from the beginning. He doesn't give mankind anything for their own benefit. He's got an ulterior motive to creep into more act in their lives and influence, but also he's using humans as chumps to do his work for himself. He's got his own ultimate needs and reasons why technology needs to be developed through humans, but it's for his own purpose, not for them.
That's right.
Exactly. Like you said, Jim, letting man harness the energy of the atom, that could be used for peaceful purposes, but what did we do? We made bombs with that. Same thing with fire and knives and gunpowder and everything else. Everything has always been taken and used for bad, where God would have intended normally for it to be used for good.
Sure.
Yeah, and I like you said, both of you, Satan is he's selfish. He's got selfish ambitions, and that ambition is one to destroy mankind because we're created in God's image. And if he can do that through technology, then that's great. And he's done that for several thousand years. And another one is just to take over the world and make a utopia for himself and his fallen angels and his demons. And that's what his plans are going to be. We see that in the 5 I wills. Jim quotes that all the time. The 5 I wills. And so we know that it's a selfish motivation, and He doesn't give us anything for our own good. Whereas our Father in heaven, the things that He gives us is for our good and is for the betterment of His kingdom and His church and everything else. So you can see the opposites right there.
Yeah.
Amen.
I agree.
Hey, if our other caller that was waiting on the line, if you want to call back now, please, and we can grab you right away.
Yeah.
Until then, I guess we can go back on track what we were talking about. Just before that, I think pretty much what we were talking about anyway: transhumanism and the manipulation of technology. The other thing to consider too is I thought it was kind of funny. I mentioned it in my book, and that was that a lot of times we're not recognizing the superior technology because we're trying to put it in terms of the internal combustion engine and the gasoline that it runs on. And when you think about it, all of the other, even in the Christian geophysicist, what's the one? I've got his book, The Genesis Record, Henry M. Morris. When you think about it, if the worldwide flood is what rapidly buried organic material all at one time, which created what we call oil and gas, then before the flood that didn't happen. So guess what? There were no huge reserves of oil and gas because we know as Christians that the Bible that the earth is not billions and billions of years old. It's, under 6,000 years old max. So they had a different energy source. They had another energy. It wasn't based on the internal combustion engine and the machinery that we would identify as machinery. Crystal skulls and other things like this could be the forms of technology that they end up calling religious artifacts when actually they're holding a hunk of technology, but we're just not identifying it as such. So
I
that's
believe
one
that
of
too, Jim.
thrown at me, is, well, where's the machines? Where's the cars? Well, there isn't any.
Yeah, I definitely believe that too, Jim, that they were, because so much of our technology is dependent on the fossil fuels and everything like that. And I believe, as you do, that the fossil fuels were the result of the flood.
We're burning the old world and the old people in our tanks.
Now, this brings us to an interesting question, though, and this is something I've recently begun to think about. My wife and I were talking about it the other day. Of course, we love the X-Files, and we were watching the X-Files, and you get about 2 or 3 seasons in, and they introduce the whole concept of the black oil, which is essentially the aliens that were under the ocean that made their way to the surface, and the whole alien mythology series of the X-Files takes off based on the black oil issue. But if we think of oil as the result of all of the compressed living material that was on the world before the flood, that is now since decayed and turned to oil, could it be that when we breathe exhaust fumes, let's say, that's from a combustion engine, that we are essentially breathing in possibly DNA from the pre-flood world?
That's a weird thought, isn't it?
Well, if we're burning this stuff, or if we're handling this stuff, or if we're using this stuff, and this stuff came from organic material, and organic material is made from DNA, it's kind of hard to get away from the idea that DNA might somehow be involved in that.
That's bizarre.
Here's another thing that's funny, thinking on the same line, Rob, is the fact that why is it the most petroleum-based products that we ingest are not good for us?
They cause cancer.
Very negative reactions to our human bodies.
Yeah.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Could be some connection there. That's pretty interesting. Interesting thought. Yeah, that's one thing I kind of like about you, Rob, is you're always thinking outside of the box. That you're solidly grounded in the the faith in the Lord, and I think that's really where we need to be now, in dealing with all the garbage that we're dealing with. I know you and maybe 3 or 4 other people, out of all the researchers, anybody that I've had the privilege to know, you are probably one of the only few people that really have grasped or gotten on the idea that time and the manipulation of time really has something to do with the end times. And we had one other new author, young man, on our show, Daniel. Oh man, forgive me, Daniel. I can't remember your last name. He did recently came out with a book. You know who I'm talking about, Dave?
Yeah, I'm trying to pick up his name
Daniel
now.
Duval.
Duval,
Yeah,
that's it. You got him. Yeah.
Yeah, now he's another one that has this grasp that, man, time has something to do with this. L.A. Marzulli is another one that has an understanding of this. So and of course Dave and I have played off of each other on the whole idea of time travel and the manipulation of time as being a significant missing element of end time events, and it really is. And I think what you and I have discussed before, Rob, is now I know we have other researchers that we both are connected with and friends that would vehemently oppose us on this, but you and I both don't really see a second incursion of sexual unions like what happened before the flood.
Exactly.
Is the way that the Nephilim return. But the missing gap to understand how that happens, we see that it happens in the last days, and we see it's forensically outside of sexual intercourse. We see that it's done clinically in a lab through abduction.
Right.
I mean, all the scriptures are there. There's tons of them. But we always, we're thinking linear, so we're saying, okay, well, yeah, they return in the last days, but how did they return right after the flood? Because they're seen right after the flood. It's because we're thinking linear. The return in the last days isn't just for that time. It isn't that they're just coming up out of the bottomless pit and going right over to the Battle of Armageddon. They are like locusts descending upon the earth all throughout time, from the beginning right up to the end, permeating time, saturated with their ideas, with their plots, their plans, and everything. So, that's the return. The return is in the last days, because time is not an element that hinders them, but we're thinking in the time. There's not a lot of people that really understand that yet, and I'm afraid that all of us that do we're kind of too far out on the limb on this one. But I think we got the Lord's backing on it, and eventually it's going to be the only thing that's going to fill in some of the gaps and make sense. So with all saying that, maybe you can share a little bit of the insight that you had about, kind of like your own wake-up call on, wow, time has something to do with this.
Well,
the story's interesting.
I didn't track it in the same way that you did, and that's why I love having these kinds of conversations, is because we all we all do our own thing, and the Lord leads us on a path, and we start doing our research. But it's when we get together and have conversations like this that, oh, that's what the Lord showed you. Wow, that's cool. Let me show you what the Lord showed me. And then we can discuss, and then we take that information back with us and go off on our own little journey again. So it's pretty exciting to hear what other people are coming up with. And when it came to time travel in my research, it wasn't related to the return of the Nephilim after the flood, which is, of course, Numbers 13:33 is the first mention of the post-flood Nephilim.
Yep.
And, 13, there you go again. 13:33. Now, my research took me in a different path as far as how the Nephilim returned after the flood. Every mention, and this is why I couldn't believe in a second incursion, is because there's no mention of angels anywhere in association with the post-flood Nephilim or the giants. But you see an awful lot associated with lineage and people, in particular Canaan. The Canaanites were loaded with giants, and the Amorites, most notably, God describes them in the book of Amos as cedar trees. And cedar trees start at 35 feet tall and go to 150 feet, the cedars of Lebanon. So, these guys are pretty huge, but they're not as big as the pre-flood giants. The pre-flood giants, the book of Enoch says, were 300 ells, or 3,000 ells, excuse me. And the scholars that I read that interpreted the ells to be 3,000 ells were equal to roughly 300 cubits, which I found interesting because that's the length of the ark. But that's about 450 feet. So, but that, if you think in terms of the mythologies of the ancient world, like the Greek mythologies, they had the Titans and the Olympians. And the way I look at it is the pre-flood giants were the Titans. These were just monsters. They were huge. But you see a steady decrease in size after the flood from Amorites, descendants of Canaan, starting at about 150 feet, or 35 to 150 feet. But then you drop pretty quickly down to the Og of Bashan class, who's about 18 feet.
Goliath.
And then you got the Goliath class, which is 9 to 12 feet. So clearly something's gone. They've lost something. You're getting smaller. But so my journey took me a little bit of a different path as far as how the Nephilim got back. But on the time travel side, it was really interesting in my research. I decided to make a kind of a spreadsheet where I would put Old Testament prophecies on the left side. I had two columns. And on the left side, I would take Old Testament prophecies that talk about the day of the Lord or the last days, or there's a lot of different synonyms for essentially the last days. And I'd put that on the left side. And then on the right side, I started to look for New Testament scriptures and things spoken of by Jesus or, John in the book of Revelation or Peter. And anything I could see regarding the last days in the New Testament, I put in the right-hand column if they matched up with the one on the left-hand column. And something really wild jumped out at me when I was looking at the book of Revelation in chapter 10. Chapter 10, it says, beginning in verse 9, I've told Jim, my favorite study Bible is a parallel Bible. I have a King James, was I was raised on the left, and New Living on the right. But I like reading from the New Living because it flows a lot better. And so I'll read Revelation chapter 10, beginning in verse 8. Revelation 10:8 says, "Then the voice from heaven called to me again, 'Go and take the unrolled scroll from the angel who is standing on the sea and on the land.' So I approached him and asked him to give me the little scroll. 'Yes, take it and eat it,' he said. 'At first it will taste like honey, but when you swallow it, it will make your stomach sour.' So I took the little scroll from the hands of the angel and ate it. It was sweet in my mouth, but it made my stomach sour. Then he said to me, 'You must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, languages, and kings.'" Chapter 11. "Then I was given a measuring stick, and I was told, 'Go and measure the temple of God and the altar, and count the number of worshipers, but do not measure the outer courtyard, for it has been turned over to the Gentiles. They will trample the holy city for 42 months. So I looked at that in comparison with something else that sounded very similar to me in the book of Ezekiel.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially it's the same, almost the same descriptive, where Ezekiel is told, "Hey, pay attention, I'm going to show you something," and he's given some instructions. And he took me in a vision, this is Ezekiel chapter 40. In a vision of God, he took me to the land of Israel and set me down on a very high mountain. From there, I could see what happened to be, or what appeared to be, a city across from me toward the south. As he brought me nearer, I saw a man whose face shone like bronze standing beside a gateway entrance. He was holding in his hand a measuring stick and a measuring rod. And then the angel says, he said to me, "Son of man, watch and listen. Pay close attention to everything I show you. You have been brought here so I can show you many things. Then you will return to the people of Israel and tell them everything you've seen." So just like John, he says, you're going to need to say things to people, nations, and people, so pay attention. Eat this scroll. Here's a measuring stick. Ezekiel's told, "Hey, pay attention. I'm going to show you some things. Oh, hey, check that guy out." And he looks over and sees a guy measuring the temple. And if you keep reading in Ezekiel chapter 40, you get down to the outer courtyard in verse 17, all of the other dimensions that are given for the temple have height, depth, and width measurements. They do a good job of telling you each area of the temple until you get to the outer courtyard. And the only thing that is given for a measurement in the outer courtyard is the distance between the two gates. And so I'm going, whoa, because John was told not to measure, all that. And so I'm going, wait a minute. Here's Ezekiel several hundred years, before John. I believe he's seeing John measuring the temple. And there's John, several hundred years later, given a vision of the future, which is our day. He's given a future of our day. You see, there's no such thing as time, because you've got multiple layers of time going there from BC to AD to our coming future taking place. And Zechariah is the same thing. He looks, he turns, and he sees a guy with a measuring stick going to measure the temple. I'm like, wait a minute. Started thinking about, wow, time travel in the Bible. How cool is that?
Yeah, it's awesome.
It is definitely one of those things that make you go, huh, wow, yeah. I mean, you just, a little bit of logical deduction, but I think now it goes beyond that, though. It's not just logical deduction. It's divine inspiration. I think God is trying tell us more and more that time is a significant factor in understanding end time events. Even our perception, when we're seeing something, the thing about the Book of Revelation, sometimes it'll hop back and forth from a heavenly scene to an earthly scene, and when we're looking at it, things in a heavenly scene, we got to stop thinking linear. We got to see this as outside of time, and that's hard for us to wrap our minds around when we're bound by time and stuck in time. But
yeah, I agree with you completely, and that's when I started diving into Revelation. Well, first of all, let me just back up and say that as I began to understand Genesis 6 and what was going on there, that the understanding of the Nephilim became the Rosetta Stone for interpreting all of Scripture. All of a sudden, everything started to make so much sense. Things that I could never understand before started to make perfect sense when you factor in the Nephilim, and they're all over the Book of Revelation too. And so I decided to get back into the Book of Revelation. I had studied it many times before, but never with the glasses of the Nephilim on, And so I started looking at it with a different preconceived notion, if you will. And as I did, I very quickly saw how extremely nonlinear that book is. And it jumps all over the place. If you're trying to think of it in linear terms, it almost drives you crazy. Which what you have to do is you literally have to create a spreadsheet and see where, because Scripture will interpret itself, and where it gives very similar descriptives of things, you can see where, wow, that trumpet actually lines up with this seal, and this lines up with this, and this lines up with that, and you get a very different timeline when you try to take the bits and pieces by the descriptives and line them up that way, rather than just reading chapter and verse, thinking that chapter 10 follows linearly in terms of the action to what happened, before that in chapter 9. It's not like that.
Exactly. Well, that's why we got to let the Holy Spirit interpret Scripture for us, because if we try to do it ourselves, we're in for a vast disappointment. But and the whole factor in what we've been talking about tonight is Holy Spirit inspiration, and Him leading us to the places to go and explaining stuff to us. 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when we were young Christians, we would have we just read the Book of Revelation and did a linear timeline. Everybody did that, and it sort of made sense, but not really. But just like Hal Lindsey with the 10 nations saying that they were all in Europe, that never made sense to me. It never ever made sense to me, and I never accepted it. And then later on, the Holy Spirit says, no, it's not 10 nations, it's 10 areas of the whole earth. Now that makes sense to me. So when we pray for wisdom, because God tells us to pray for wisdom, and He'll give it to us. When we ask the Holy Spirit for help, my goodness, the things that have just through us three by the Holy Spirit and many others that we have fellowship with, look at all the stuff that's been revealed to us just in the last 5 or 6 years about all this stuff. It's totally amazing, but it was also forecast that it would happen. So bless the Lord for all that.
Dave, that's really interesting too, because where it talks about in Daniel that in the last days knowledge shall increase. If you look at the Hebrew, it has the letter Hey in front of it, which means it's the. So it's actually saying the knowledge will increase. Not just true. We have general knowledge increasing, but the knowledge of the Scriptures and God's plan and prophetic things that couldn't really be discerned or understood before, because God hadn't allowed us to until this period of time. But now, as the days are getting shorter, I believe God is pouring out more revelation so that we can be prepared for what's coming. A friend of mine asked me one time, he said, what is the purpose of prophecy? And I thought about it for a second. I said, well, I believe that the purpose of prophecy is to prepare us for things to come. And so I kind of launched off with that premise, and that's where I'm at today. And, I'm not dogmatic by any means on the things that I'm talking about here. I'm just kind of a researcher out there saying, hey, this is what I'm finding. What do you think?
Exactly. If you look at that scripture, too, in Daniel, the knowledge shall increase. I can't remember how it happened. It's in one of my articles on my website, but it also could suggest that not only the godly knowledge for the Christian or the believer in Jesus, but it also for the ungodly knowledge for the unbelievers that will increase too. So it's a knowledge of ungodliness for them, and a knowledge of divine revelation for us.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that things are being revealed also because I don't think the devil, and Jim and I talked about this on another program, had the whole game plan. I think he didn't understand a lot of things either.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if he understood what was the plan of God with his son, he never would have killed him.
Exactly.
But
I think it's interesting too, don't you? When it says knowledge shall increase and people will run to and fro. Now, traditionally, 100 years ago, even to this day, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was a new Christian, they were saying, well, look at how we can travel much quicker and faster with airplanes and stuff like that. And I'm going, nah, I think the travel is just even more unique than that. We're talking traveling to and fro might actually include knowledge of how to travel to and fro, forward and backward.
Let me throw something out at you, and this is actually I'm giving exclusive to you and your listeners. I haven't told anybody this before regarding one of the things that's going to be in C that I've already written. I'm a video guy. I do a lot of video editing and stuff, and so what happens is when you go out and shoot footage with a camera, it's on a tape, and you take the tape and you import it into the computer and you bring it into an editing software, and what happens is it comes in basically as a strip, like a ribbon, if you will, a bar. You drag it onto the timeline, and it's sitting on a timeline. And video, it shoots at 29.97 frames per second. Let's just say 30 frames per second. So It's really an illusion. If you're looking at 1 second of video, you're basically looking at 30 still pictures that when a playhead goes across those 30 still pictures, it gives the illusion of movement. Right. And so I got to thinking, what if that's the way kind of life is? David Hitt, I don't know if you know who David Hitt is. He's a physicist who actually lives not too far from me. He lives local to where I live. He's a physicist, and he's one of the founders of the Future Congress. And if you ever get a chance to have lunch with a physicist, do it. You're gonna have some pretty cool conversations. He was talking about the concept of dimensionlessness, and if you think about God in terms of dimensionlessness, there's no dimension to God, which means you can't measure him. In order to measure something, it requires a space in which for you to be able to judge it against other objects and measure it, right? So, but the problem with dimensionlessness is it's static. There's no movement. There's no movement in dimensionlessness because it requires space to have movement. Right. You see what I'm saying? And so if all of creation is inside of dimensionlessness, and dimensionlessness is static, then that puts a whole new spin on the whole now is the time of salvation. Right. That really, there's a playhead going over us right now, scrubbing the timeline, as it were, that we may all be just simply sitting in static pieces of what we call time, but it's static. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And so, if that's the case, as I'm moving my playhead back and forth on my editing software, I got to thinking, they call it scrubbing the timeline. I got to thinking, if I want to go back to 1 minute on the timeline, I just move the playhead over there, and it puts me over a still image, and I hit play, and it renders it 30 frames per second. If I want to go to 10 minutes, I move the playhead. And I thought, wow, what if there's a time scrubber out there? It's just sort of
we call them wormholes.
Well, that's what we would call it.
Jim and I were talking. I'm sorry. Jim and I were talking a few weeks ago, and I said, wouldn't it be something if actually when we remember something, if you're thinking about a past event and you have a fondness of it, and you're playing it over in your head, imagine that that is actually time travel too. And it's just like. Yeah, like you said, you're running ahead back over that linear line. You're actually back in time to remember that. So I thought that was kind of interesting too.
what is a photograph? If you look at a photograph, it is the ability to capture that one static frame of time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had this kind of modeled for me in a very unusual way in Albania, one of my trips. I was in Albania, and a very scenic area, mountains, is gorgeous, and I saw this dirt road that led off to this beautiful mountain vista in the background, and this gypsy guy was riding a really kind of scraggly horse on this dirt road heading towards me. I thought, oh, man, that's just a cool shot, you know. So I'm videotaping this gypsy on this horse riding towards me, and as he got closer to me and he saw my camera, this dude started freaking out on me. I mean, just like ballistic. And he got ready to get off his horse and come after me. I'm like, what the heck, man, you know? This other guy came and stopped him, and turned out he was like what we might call like a mall cop or something. You know, he's kind of a security cop of that recreational area there. Mm-hmm. And he got rid of the guy, and anyway, he says, just a word of advice, you might not want to videotape gypsies. I said, why? What was he screaming about? What was he saying? He says, stop, you're stealing my soul.
Oh,
wow.
My gosh, that's what the Indians used to think, too, of pictures being
That's right.
taken.
They believe that when you capture their image, you're stealing part of their soul, or even their whole soul in particular. And if you look at a photograph in that light, you have, in essence, frozen. I'm looking at a picture of my wife and I right in front of me here on my desk. It's a picture that was captured, a still frame of time. And I don't know what the frame rate of life is. I know the frame rate of video and frame rate of film is 24 frames per second. What's the frame rate of life? You know, and what is the implications of that? If you can capture those still frames and move, what did Joshua do? He froze the playhead.
Right.
Joshua commanded the sun to stand still, which essentially means Earth stopped rotating, or
exactly.
the playhead stopped moving.
Mm-hmm.
It's all an illusion.
Oh, yeah.
I like even Hezekiah's is better. He rolls it back.
Yeah.
The
miraculous thing about Joshua's thing is if the universe stopped, it means all the atoms had to stop. Everything had to stop. Literally, if you think about it, everybody should have just died, and the universe should have just disappeared at that time because everything was motionless. Nothing existed because there were no atoms moving. There was no time happening at that time. So that when you think about that, it makes it even more miraculous to think that. You know, he stopped the sun and the moon from moving, but he also stopped the whole course of the universe. But he let all the people on the earth remain breathing and alive at the same time, and that just totally amazes me when I think about that.
I think the key to that might be found in where Peter says that for a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like a day. Where, in a sense, then God is able to exist in between time, in between those frames. So that what appears to be frozen actually might be his ability to live in between time itself. Now, even as I'm speaking this out, I haven't a clue how to explain myself on that. I can't even wrap my mind around it. But I mean, that statement made by Peter is, I think, introducing us to a concept of time that God is not limited to.
Right.
Kind of ties in with what you were saying, Rob. Hey, Rob, as long as we're talking about this, I wondered, because I don't think I ever asked you about this one, but what did you think about the film clip that was found on the grand opening of one of Charlie Chaplin's movies where this, what looks like a man dressed like a woman is walking by what looks like talking on a flip cell phone? Have you ever seen that?
I did see that. I spent a lot of time looking at that, actually. It's
me too.
Man, it's, you know, I, of course, see it on YouTube, and automatically I become skeptical because I know how to do tricks and special effects and make you believe things that aren't really there. I understand.
Sure.
What I would love to see is an original, because I'm a little bit skeptical, so I would actually love to see the original film reel, you know, from that piece. Mm-hmm. But still, I am open to these things now. There was a time when I might not have been, but truth is, in fact, way stranger than fiction. So
so far, no one has actually been able to publicly come out and slam this or debunk it. That's what I think is so intriguing about it. It's one of those things that, wow, this might actually. Now some people have said, well, what about the fact if it's a cell phone in the 1920s, there's no towers, how are they getting reception? Well, I don't know if you remember this little tidbit of information, but and I can't even think of the guy's name. It's David something. I don't remember the last name, but he was actually the bass guitar player for a group called Iron Butterfly, who had a one wonder hit In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, which actually was supposed to be in the Garden of Eden, but they were so whacked out on drugs when they did it that it came out In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, and they kept it that way instead of redoing it. I know too much about trivial stuff in some ways. But anyways, this guy, the bass guitar player, was a genius. He later ended up becoming working with the government on high classified areas of physics, and he had made a statement before he suddenly they think committed suicide. They found his van in the bottom of a ravine, and he was dead, but he was having some real problems anyway, emotionally, mentally, and things going on in his life. But just prior to his death, he was working with the government on the highest level of research and development, and he had made a claim or statement that he had discovered a mathematical formula to send telephone waves beyond the speed of light.
Wow.
That little tidbit there in connection, see, this is where, studying this for so many decades, you glean all these little tidbits, and you remember, wait a minute, and here's an important connection that connects a dot with another dot, and you get a bigger picture. It goes back to Henry K. Morrison back in the 50s, made a connection with UFOs and possibly time and possibly with Nazis. And when he was going to break out to the newspaper his findings, he suddenly turns off the side of the road and commits suicide. Another physicist, McDonald, did the same kind of thing, made certain connections. All of a sudden, he jumps out of the window of his apartment. And I'm being a little bit facetious. They didn't. They were knocked off. Someone, powers that be, are suppressing certain technology, certain knowledge. And I think it's because they have a plan for an end-time deception that's going to include all of this technology, which is going to be used against us. We're going to say, oh, my gosh, it can't be us. It's got to be aliens. It's got to be extraterrestrial. It's got to be supernatural. We can't do these things. Well, yeah, we can, because we've been given the forbidden knowledge by fallen angels, and it's coming back on us to pull the wool over our eyes. But,
yeah, I believe that. We may be even thinking too small when it comes to the cell phone issue and that movie clip, because let's say it's a little further ahead or a little more advanced than our iPhones or whatever we're carrying around today. Look at Star Trek. They were communicating with a ship in orbit, with their little.
Right.
It looks exactly like a cell phone today. This was Gene Roddenberry's imagination back in the mid '60s. But they were talking on a handheld device that looks to us like a cell phone that was talking to a ship in orbit. So, we don't have to have cell phone towers for us to be thinking about whatever that guy was holding. But it's a very strange clip.
I know. I must get that 100 times over and over and over again going, my gosh, my eyes are seeing this. I can't believe it. But the thing that got me was when I did further research and I found that other people have scrutinized it, people that were experts, and they go, man, this is legitimate. This isn't Photoshop stuff. It's a real deal. Wow. Cool.
It makes you want to start looking at everything now a little bit closer.
Well,
see what's going on in the background.
The other thing that gets me is that I think very soon, and this ties in, and I'm sure that you're right there with me on this. Through the occult, not that I'm giving the occult credibility here, but what I'm saying is that Satan has a counterpart for everything that we have. So we have our prophecies, our promises in the Bible. Satan has his prophets and his prophecies. We know that, so I'm going to have a senior moment now. Edgar Cayce had made some prophecies about future things that would be discovered. One of them was about a room that they would find amazing things between the paws of the Sphinx.
Well, now they've done ultrasound readings. They know that there's a room between the paws of the Sphinx. We also know that from further excavations that there's a tunnel pathway going down to this room from the back of the Sphinx. Awaz, who's the head of the Egyptology in the area, won't allow anybody, it's kind of like a government-controlled thing, and he won't allow anybody to do any digging or any research or anything, so that's been kind of stuck. Eventually, I think, things like that, maybe the edifices on Mars, is going to be further revealed, and it's going to redefine our past from pre-flood, and it might be at perfect timing when we have some kind of an intervention, a final disclosure, mile-wide ships over the cities. You know what I mean? We'll be presented with new or different information all at one time, like a barrage from several different areas, several different ways and means, and the world's just going to go ooh and ah. And I think the idea of time, or our enemy having the ability to not be limited by time, is something that is going to be the important key to dispel the lies that are being presented to us. But without that, everybody's just going to go, ooh, ah, wow, who's like unto the beast? Who can make war with him?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Everywhere, all the time, all present, ooh, all powerful.
Well, it seems to me that at one time, one of our talks, it might have even been on when we had our radio show over on the Watchman FM, we were talking to Rob, that he had some insights about what was down there by this big. Was that you, Rob, that we talked about?
Oh, yeah. The Giza Plateau, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I covered that in one of my blogs, the Tomb of Osiris, which is a really strange deal. It was between the center pyramid and the Sphinx. It was about halfway between the two, and then about 100 feet down. And when you get down, the first chamber you come to had like 6 little cubby holes with sarcophagus in it, and where there would be a 7th one, it was another tunnel that went further down, and that one was full of water, and they had to pump out all the water. When they did, they went down into this thing, and they found an island that it was like a square island, stone island. It had water around it, and on each corner of the square island, it had these square pillars that had all kinds of ancient hieroglyphs written on it, and which is interesting. Those have been destroyed now. Somebody took a sledgehammer to it or something and destroyed them. And I'm like, what was on those things and why did they destroy it? It's one of those things that makes you really go, what? And inside that square island, there was another moat of water surrounding another little island that had about a 10-foot long empty sarcophagus sitting on it. And below that, and this was their words, you mentioned Zahi Hawass, below that is what they called the shaft to the bottomless pit.
Wow.
And that was all discovered back in 1999. And it really makes you think, what in the world is going on over there? And, man, all this stuff we've been watching in movies and, Stargate and all that kind of stuff, there's more truth in that than you would think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. They give us little tidbits of those things. Yeah.
Well, even look at Stargate. Take Stargate, for example. All of the so-called aliens were Hera, Zeus, Thor. I mean, they were all the gods and goddesses of ancient myth. Like you, and like King Wells, we are going to see this someday. And I think when they come back and pretend to be the good alien angels, they will also be all these famous named people, and they'll be back. And it's going to daze and amaze everybody. They're just going to go ooh and ah. And in the scenario that the reason behind this is that as Jesus returns and he's able to bring all things unto himself, Satan is going to mock that by bringing all myths, legends, science, technology, history, rewritten, of course, according to his way. He's going to meld all this together, all the earth's religions. Is going to say, well, all of you got everything wrong, but all of you got everything right. Let me show you how it all melds together. And so that's why we're going to see good alien angel, tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Thor returning, and Zeus, and all the others from all the other cultures and everything.
They're going to be there, and everybody's just going to go, wow.
Have you seen Thor yet?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen Super 8. I'm behind. Probably. Well, with me, the biggest thing is being on a limited income. I can't go to the movies all the time. Like Dave was saying, I have to take out a loan, but I wait until they're on DVD. I got this from my life before when I made real good money. I've got a 50-inch big screen TV, surround sound, home theater. I don't need to go to a movie. I can watch, get a DVD and for $5 still rental and enjoy it right here at my own home. So I usually wait until everything comes out in video. Sometimes I can't wait. Battle LA, I couldn't wait. I love it. My wife fell asleep on it, by the way. I finally got that, when it came out on tape.
What? How do you fall asleep on that movie?
Well,
okay.
it's
my wife fell asleep during Lord of the Rings. I'm like, honey, how do you fall asleep during Lord of the Rings?
It's testosterone versus estrogen. It truly is. She looked at me and she says, that is definitely a guy flick. Well, I don't know. I thought it was just, for me, here was a movie that was awesome. And I think to every veteran, and even people that just have a heart for, what it's like to be in the service, but I think every veteran could really relate to that movie. It was less about aliens and more about, I think, the importance of unity and getting over oneself and seeing the bigger picture, and I just loved that about that. Now, I'm an Army guy, and this was about Marines, but still, I had to get over that part.
Yeah, it's still the same. If you wait until, probably in your local dollar theater in the next couple of weeks or in Redbox for $1, but you need to see Thor because, man, and there's a lot of movies coming out right now that are all about the ancient gods. And the same
you're right.
theme, the same theme is in all of them. The Son of God saves the world, but it's always the son of, Odin, the son of Poseidon, the son of Zeus. It's the wrong god. But this particular movie was absolutely loaded with symbolism and things that I believe are really going to play into what the real deal is in the last days. And they talk a lot about the Einstein-Rosen bridge. I think that's what it's called, but essentially a wormhole. And
you know what? You just convinced me. Now it's become the top of my list. I'm going to have to go see it.
Well, if you do,
all that in there, I want to check it out. I'll bring my pencil and pad, and take notes.
Yeah, if you do, wait till the end of the credits too, because they have a little piece after the credits roll. But you'll want to catch the little piece afterwards too, and you'll see the implication of what they're saying there.
Oh, cool.
And when you go, I don't want to ruin anything for you, but just go there with CERN in your head. Think about what's going on with CERN.
Really?
CERN.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Talk about an abuse. I think it's really been an act of God that thing keeps breaking down and failing. It's like potential.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we're like a bunch of monkeys sitting there with a loaded gun and the safety's off, and we're sitting there playing catch and throwing it at each other. Like, man, we don't know what we're doing. We're just being careless, stupid.
Well, I think maybe we're being careless, stupid, and we're being used, but the fallen are definitely, as it was in the days of Noah, we have to remember that Noah lived for 950 years. 600 years before the flood, 350 years after the flood, and then in the 350 after, you have the Tower of Babel. And I really believe that the Tower of Babel was not a tall building, but rather a stargate, a portal, a wormhole maker to bridge our world with the heavenly realm. And if you think in those terms, that's exactly what CERN is. And I'm going to post a link in the blog to my blog in your chat room again.
Sure.
That's a blog that is not finished yet. I had to take a break to work on the future Congress stuff, but that's dealing with CERN, and I called it Concerned with Saturn, and I capitalized the CERN from concerned to represent CERN, because their intentions are pretty plain. If you look at their logo, first of all, is 3 sixes sitting on top of each other. They have a huge statue in the front of Lord Shiva, this massive statue of Lord Shiva, which is the god of destruction. Yeah. Now, can you imagine, the separation of church and state and all this stuff, and scientists are always atheists. Scientists are always atheists, so what do they have? One of the primary Hindu gods of their trinity, a huge statue sitting in front of this place of science. you begin to realize these people have an agenda and they're trying to do something.
Sure.
And it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
All of NASA, every name of every spacecraft, every mission, everything has had an occult equivalent significance to it. And then you even look at NASA. Where did it start out from? It was from paperclip Nazi scientists.
Yep.
Right.
All they've done is just continued their agenda over and transferred it over to us, and they dazzled and amazed our Judeo-Christian-based scientists into reconsidering everything they ever knew. Where? Because the proof in the pudding was their outside-of-the-box technologies that produced scientific results. And it wooed them, and it caused them to reconsider all that they previously had thought was important or dear to them. And, in turn, it's done that to a whole society also. It's it's crazy. Like you said, separation of church and state, but then you see how much of the occult is infused with all of their ideas and everything, and that's okay. It's okay because people don't realize it and haven't made the connection.
Now,
but even the first deep space mission went to the Aldebaran system. The Aldebaran system is where the Nazis felt that their Nordic gods had originally came from, and so naturally they're kids seeking out their papa. But what they don't realize is their papa's the wrong guy. He's not the god of creation. He's the god of this world.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I think I might have read this in one of Dave Flynn's books. Concerning NASA, I never could understand why they could only launch in a certain launch window until I read, I believe, in his first book that NASA never launched the spacecraft until the planet Sirius was 19.47 degrees above the horizon. Did anybody else ever hear that?
No, but it doesn't surprise me. There was a Huffington Post article that came out today that was talking about the end of the shuttle program with the launching of the space shuttle Atlantis, and it says that this has ended, but Orion is arising, and of course that caught my attention.
Wow!
That the new program is called Orion. You had Gemini and Mercury and Apollo.
Yep.
You got the space shuttle program. Well, the next one that's on tap is called Orion. And I'm like, and it said that they had 135 missions, but only 133 were successful, and they launched 777 people into space. 777. I'm like, come on, guys.
It's like a bad Matrix show, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of things come down to mathematics that way. This is where Matthew Miller is just fantastic. He's got a mind like Dave in that way. It's just he sees everything in the zeros and ones, and it's incredible how there's a mathematical consistency to all of this stuff. It is like a Matrix, it literally is. Yeah, it's just wild. It's like pinch me. Am I dreaming? Is this a bad sci-fi, B-rate sci-fi movie, or is this reality? It's reality.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that concerns me, and this kind of gets back to the whole mission and reason for Seed, is that there's nobody talking about this stuff in the church.
Nope.
No, there isn't.
You go to pick any your regular run-of-the-mill church. I don't care what denomination. Pick one. They got their 7-point PowerPoint presentation about what? This is great, maybe life practical issues and stuff that may help you out, but man, what's really coming, nobody has a clue, except for a small handful of people that are out there, like you guys doing radio shows and, other people writing books and whatnot, but we're definitely in the minority. I mean, there's probably a dozen of us in our little group, of researchers. And we're crying at the top of our lungs, guys, pay attention, look what's going on here. And everybody thinks we're drinking Kool-Aid and wearing tinfoil hats. And, I actually
Rob,
made a tinfoil hat.
One thing that we were going to have a tinfoil hat contest one time in our chat room, just for yucks. But I've been actually, as a minister, non-denominational, but in ministry for 36 years now. And I remember my first sermon I ever gave on Genesis 6, and I just had touched the tip of the iceberg. I had about 4 or 5 scriptures, but I basically knew, just the basics of what I know now. But I knew this back in 1970. I think it was 1978, I gave my first sermon on Genesis 6. And I talked about the ancient myths and gods and how everything was going to be mishmashed together in religions. Didn't really understand a lot of it, but, I mean, if you can imagine, from the pulpit, I shared that. And right away, it was just, like, way too soon, too much for too many. I mean, it was too out there for people. It was too far ahead of its time. So for me, from back in then, 1978, at that time, I think I.D.E. Thomas hadn't even had his book come out until the mid-'80s. There was only one or two people that even addressed anything like this. Southwest Radio Church, a radio program, and you're going to be fortunate enough to meet the founder of that, I think, when you go to this seminar that you're going to be speaking at. They were the only ones that afforded any kind of a glimmer of things outside of the box. You just didn't see it. I mean, there was no internet back then. There wasn't even personal computers back then. So we're talking, a long time ago. That was obscure, crazy stuff. When I first got my first web page, I think in 1997, I was one of 5 or 6 of Christians. Dave Flynn's was one of the other first originals. We had an audience of maybe 200 people, and everybody else thought we were just crazy, wacko nuts. But I've seen how it's grown from 1996, 97 to now, and I'm greatly encouraged. Even though the churches aren't addressing it, where there was maybe 5, 10, 20 worldwide sites that Christians that tried to grasp the idea of UFOs and aliens, how it fit into end-time things. Now you go, and there's hundreds, there's thousands globally, and more people are understanding this. I mean, to the point where there's literally hundreds of thousands of people worldwide that get it, that understand it. Mm-hmm. From when I first started, when it was way obscure, I see a lot of hope there. I see a whole generation that has been raised, what I call the Omega generation. They've been abused. They've been raised with everything, nothing of what I got when back in the 50s. It's all gone. They've been raised totally in a New Age thing. But I also see that in them, they're hungry for the truth.
Yeah,
they're beginning to, they're getting caught up in all this other stuff. But when you and I, being equipped with the truth, when we can address some of the questions that they've had, that they've gone to churches and have gotten no answers, when they run into you and me, they're equally more dazed and amazed. And I see hope in their eyes when I'm talking to them, because I can give them answers. Some of them, they've come up cocky as heck to me. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? And it blows their mind. I'm giving them answers, logical, sound answers that they never heard before. Because, these lies that are being put upon all of us are very sophisticated. They're not stupid. They're not just random crazy ideas. They come candy-coated with a lot of pseudo-scientific sounding things, psychobabble, a lot of it, but still it sounds appealing, and people are buying into it. But when you and I are able to talk to them, we break all those barriers down. We give them a new hope that the scriptures are real, that they're relevant, that they describe all the things that they're being challenged with or they believe. When I had my store in Roswell, I led people to the Lord through time travel of all of the crazy things. Another one from cavemen, giving them a sound biblical, response to it. You don't see the churches doing that. You know what? I'm sorry, man. This is supposed to be me interviewing you guys, and you, Rob, and here I am going off preaching. I got to apologize. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Jim, I've said it before, that the toughest thing about being ahead of your time is you're the only one there.
Exactly.
So it takes a while for people to catch up, but I appreciate that there were guys like you paving the way out there. I'm kind of a latecomer in this whole thing. I've always been fascinated by it, studied it and everything, but now I've become vocal about it and teaching it and talking about it anywhere I can find an audience. I think the word needs to get out.
Yeah, it definitely does. Oh, I see myself, and I'm hitting 60 in 2 weeks, and I mean, just in reality, I'm not going to be around much longer, so, I may not be around till the very end of it, but I'm encouraged when I see someone, well, you're my son's age, and I just see you, like I said before, you're solidly anchored in the Word, and yet you're able to think outside of the box, and you're able to have a wonderful balance and communicate that to others, and that's what I'm saying. There's the hope. I see that, even if it goes beyond my lifetime, I know that there's people like you and many others that are out there that are going to continue it on in the next generation. And so I'm safe to go if I had to.
Yeah. I have a feeling you're going to be here for the big show. I don't think we have a whole lot more time left.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely agree.
It's coming too fast and too quick for it to be just another one of those times that everybody thought was going to be the end times. Now everything is just meshing together too well. I was looking at the I look at the earthquake sites 2 or 3 times a day. I'm kind of a fanatic about it, and there's been such an increase in earthquakes. It's not even funny. But the serious thing is that nobody's reporting them anymore. For instance, 2 days ago, there was a 7.8 magnitude earthquake down between Fiji and New Zealand. That's a big earthquake.
Down in Tonga.
Yeah, big earthquake, and nobody reported it.
Yeah, you would think you'd hear something about it. You would 10 years ago, wouldn't you?
But you know what the reason is? Because so many people have heard there'll be earthquakes in various places and disease and famine. They're going to put the two together and realize that, hey, we are at the end of the age. That's why that's not getting covered, because it would just lead too many people to realize the truth of Matthew chapter 24. And then they're going to start realizing, hey, Jesus knew what he was talking about. He must be the Son of God. We better stop what we're doing and repent and come to him in faith, and there'd be a big revival. So, no, they just don't report it at all, and nobody knows about it. So, big cover-up. The government media complex is doing its job very well not to do its job.
Or we have Miachio Kaku redefined and re-explained to us that it's the same as it ever was, and what you're seeing isn't really what you're seeing. And he has a good way of doing that.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's what's even more unbelievable to me, some of the things these guys say is so unbelievable. But what's even more unbelievable is that people believe it.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, does anybody think anymore for themselves?
Well, science and scientists, that's all you have to do is put a scientist on the television, and people are just, their minds go into neutral, and they just accept whatever they hear. They become scientists, or what I call them is scientist priests, because they're no longer defining the natural world to us. They're telling us how we're supposed to live in light of the natural world that they're explaining to us.
Yeah.
And people, they've replaced the mindless obedience of the Holy Roman Empire. Now it's become science, is people's religion.
Yeah, and it's sad when you see it in the church too, because you see it there a lot. You'll walk up to a friend or somebody you haven't seen in a long time, and you'll just how things going. Eventually, you're going to get into evolution, or you get into UFOs, because that seems to always come around when I'm at church. But all of a sudden, well, God used evolution, or the aliens are friendly, real, and these are people in church that should know better, and they just don't know better, So it's not only infected the world, it's infected the body of Christ in a big way too. That's going to cause a lot of people to lose their faith when these things finally show up and say, hey, we're gods, we're the saviors, we made Jesus. Oh, okay, well, and because if they can't think for themselves when they have all the resources to do it, then they're really not going to be able to think for themselves when somebody that they revere or somebody that they think is greater than us comes down and tells them a great big lie. So,
but that's why I get excited about Rob's series, because he is turning the same tactics that Satan is using through the History Channel and through all these other crap, and through some of the popular media movies and everything. He's turning the tables, using it, being as wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove, to present the gospel in a way that it needs to be done to a younger generation. So, just can't say enough, and I try to get everybody to get on board and to back you up so that you can finally have enough to get things going. It needs to be out there.
I appreciate that. Definitely appreciate it, man. And it's not us. We're not doing this alone, right? That's why we're inviting people to join in with us so that everybody can have a part of it. I had a dream. Well, it wasn't a dream. It was more like it was a prayer, really. Back in 2002, I was going through a really, really rough time in my life, and I was on an airplane just totally broken and was offered a job in Ohio to do basically the same thing I did for East West 2 years before I got hired at East West. And I was just too banged up. And I was like, Lord, man, this is something I'd love to do, but for you, but you're going to have to heal me first because I'm pretty messed up right now. And my prayer was that, Lord, I don't care how you do it, but somehow, some way, I want you to use me to be instrumental in leading the last person to Christ before you come back. Now, the beauty about that prayer is that it could be me talking to somebody face-to-face, or I could make a video that makes somebody get excited to contribute to a ministry, to give money to a missionary who leads, it could be it's the ultimate network marketing, campaign,
sure.
Where I just want to be in the chain somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
And that is my prayer. That is my, if I could have, I don't want to say dying wish, but I mean, that's my ultimate end game prayer. Is Father, I want to be used somehow. Put me in the field, the final seconds of the game. I want to be used to be instrumental in leading the last person to Christ, and that's our goal. So anybody who partners with us to do what we're trying to do, they have
sure.
a part of that. They can be in that chain as well. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thought.
That's what people who get angry and frustrated, who are Christians, who have their eyes open, they see what's going on. And like me, I watch some of the goofy stuff like the Ancient Aliens, series on History Channel or whatever channel it's on. I watch some of the goofball stuff, and when they get these so-called biblical experts there that just start spewing out the most insane, crazy, hack job of biblical interpretations, and it makes you wonder, where do they get these guys? If you want to know where modern-day Nephilim are, that's got to be some of them guys or gals are.
For sure.
That's where they are right there, the ones off about the Bible in such weird ways. It's like people are frustrated and go, well, what can I do about this? Well, get behind Rob. Support his effort to get this TV series out. It's going to be life-changing for literally potentially millions of people.
What a segue.
Take a little bit of cash. If everybody just gave a little tiny bit, it would add up to a lot, and then it's on the air.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue, Jim, because we're down below 5 minutes now, and
all that.
Yeah, so we can get Rob again to give us all of his contact information, where people can go and everything, and then we can give our information, and we'll call it a night. But go ahead, Rob. Tell people again about Seed and about how they can contribute and where they should go, okay?
Sure. The primary web page is seedtheseries.com, and that'll take you to a splash page that has basically two links presented to you. On the left, there's a link that says Sow, and if you click on that, it shows you how you can become a financial partner with us. And the link on the right says See, and if you click on that, there's some videos and radio shows and different things and text, and there's even part one of the pilot episode script is online available for people to read if they want to read part one of a two-part episode. So it's kind of a teaser. You can just read the first one. It leaves you hanging, but you can kind of see where it's going a little bit. So that's pretty much going to give you what you need to know about Seed. The series is also a trailer, a little 3-minute. Now, the series is going to be live action. We didn't have the money to go out and shoot actors and do all the special effects for real, photorealistic, so I decided to have a concept animation, if you will, to show people the idea. So it's a little 3-minute animated trailer that I made just to give people the idea. So that's that for Seed. If you want to know what the nonfiction is behind the science fiction, you could go to seedtheseries.com/blog, and that'll take you to the blog site where it's a work in progress. I've got about 14 chapters done, I think, and I've got about 10 more to write. And there's also a bunch of audio there so you can listen to it as well as read it. And I am also on Blog Talk. If you go to blogtalkradio.com/revolutionary radio, that's my radio program, and I've got some really cool interviews on there. I've had Jim on 3 times, I think. That was, in fact, he was the last show that I did was with Jim, and so
awesome.
People can. And I got contact information on all of those websites, so people can get a hold of me that way.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, we have Jim and Dave here too, and Jim's website is echoesofenoch.org. You can go there to read about his book and find out how to order it, or you can just go to Amazon.com and look for Beyond Science Fiction. Thank you. I have those senior moments too. I'm over 50, so I'm allowed to do that. But Beyond Science Fiction by Jim Wilhelmsen. Check it out. It's a must-read. I've read it several times, and I think I could read it 3 or 4 more times and still not get all that's in there into my little brain. We have 90 seconds. My website is delusionresistance.org. My book is Unholy Communion. You can get that on, just go to unholycommunion.info and you can find out lots of places to get it. But anyway, I just want to say that I've enjoyed being with Rob tonight and Jim, and I'm just going to give it up for what anybody else wants to say. I got about probably 10 seconds now. So 60 seconds. Okay.
Bob, it's always good to have you, man, and this has been a great interview. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it, and I'd love to do it again sometime.
All right, we'll be praying for you for the upcoming thing in Missouri. That's, when is that, July 22nd, because that's my birthday, and that's why I remembered that.
Oh.
So,
for your birthday. Oh, boy.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's the 22nd to the 24th, 22nd to the 24th, and we'll be traveling probably on the 20th, so we're driving up there, so... Yeah, we definitely appreciate the prayers as we travel.
Yeah.
All right,
cool.
That'd be great. Cool. Well, I guess, are we running down? I'm still in the chat room thing looking.
Yeah, well, the clock doesn't show. 10 seconds, okay. Anyway, well, God bless everybody. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next week, Friday night at 10 Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific, okay? Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bless everybody. Thanks,
Good
Rob.
night. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.